Did you know that April is quiz month at Pharmagos? If you didn't, now you know. So what we decided to do was really to create a quiz in Excel to show you how to do it. And if you stay with us till the end, we will have not one, but two surprises for you. Let's get started. Before we start, a very important note is that you already have this file. In the description below, you can have the link to the VIP area. You can get the password from this video and download it by yourself. So the purpose of this video is really to understand how this Excel file was made. In this workbook, we have two worksheets, one for the quiz itself and one for the support data. We call it data. You can call it however you want, doesn't matter. If you don't have it, you can click on the plus sign and then right click on the newly created worksheet and click on rename. So let's see what we have here. We have first the column with a question, the question reference. We have two questions, but of course you can add as many questions as you want. Then we have the column with a correct answer. This is critical. Might be A, B, C, D, might be 1, 2, 3, 4, doesn't matter. The purpose is really to put here the correct answer to each question. Then, if you decide to do what we did and add the feedback for each type of answer, correct or incorrect, you can add those two columns. And then in the participant answer, you can mirror actually the answers from the participant. You will see later on why. And then for the score, we will actually turn into 1 if the answer is correct and 0 if the answer is incorrect. So this is everything that we need in this data worksheet. Now, in the main worksheet, the one with the quiz, the very first thing is to go here on the view option and to deselect the grid lines just for the aesthetics. So that's the very first thing that we can do. Then we can leave empty for now, the very first 3 rows. I will do the same. So I will scroll down just to be sure that we are doing the same thing. Then you can list the question reference, the question text, the answer reference, the answer text. Then put here your answer or whatever you want. And then for the participant answer, you can select this cell and go to data, at the right data validation, and then in the settings to select from this list of options, to select the list, and either to click on the arrow and select your options, or what else you can do is to type here A, B, C, because that will show however ABC. And then in the input message, you can add something that will help the participant know that they need to answer. So we can put here, please select, or just select as you wish. Then an input message, add your answer here or whatever. And when we click OK, not only this empty cell becomes actually a data validation cell, but the input that you specified appears here. So it's a good user experience for them. Then you can add a new empty line, and then if you decide to add feedback, you can add the feedback. You can put it in any format that you want, and you will have it empty at this stage. So that should be perfect. You can continue on the second question, do exactly the same. Question reference, question text, answer reference, answer text, your answer, again, data validation, So that's the data validation part. Let's move forward. Moving forward, let's do also a bit of conditional formatting for the answers. So if we look in our data file, we know that the correct answer is A for the very first question. So we want if the person will answer with a here to turn it green. If it's answering anything else, then to remain as it is. So how we can do this is really to select both the answer reference and the answer text. Then we can go to conditional formatting. Then we can add a new rule. We can go to the last option, which is use a formula to determine which cells format. So what we want to have is if this equals the answer of the person, then we can choose in the field, we can choose a color. And for instance, we can make it green. I won't press on OK because it's already made, but you can press OK and you will see exactly the same result that we have here. And then what we can do is to continue for the wrong answers for B and C. Again, to do conditional formatting, new rule based on formula, the last option. And then here to say if this equals this, and then choose a format and yellow or whatever color you want. What will happen will have a result just like we have here. And again, for the C, conditional formatting, new rule based on formula. Then if the answer here equals this one, then the format yellow or whatever you want. And that's it. So we will have the colors based on the answer, just like a real quiz, right? Now, what we can do is to continue to the feedback. And for the feedback, what we will do, we will check if the answer is correct. So what we have in this function is actually if the answer here is equal to what we have in our data, then to show the actual result. But let's delete everything and make it again. So here we can put a formula saying that if this equals to, and then without pressing anything else, we go to the mouse on the data and we select this one. The value if true, and the value if true will be feedback on the correct answer. If value is false, then we can add, I don't know, incorrect answer and close parentheses, and that's it. So now what we have here, A, it's returning the correct answer. If it's going to be B or C, it's going to return what we put here. But let's say that the person didn't answer yet. And as you can see, it's by default taking the second option. So we need to make a bit of housekeeping here. And what we can say is between the equal sign and if, add another if and say if. And then we go with the mouse on this cell is blank. We add here is blank. Then we double click on the cell, close parentheses. And then if it's blank, we add a comma. What we want to happen? Nothing. If it's not empty, then we add a comma and we continue with our first if statement. And as you can see, if the end parenthesis is red, we need to add another one just to be black, just to be sure that we finished our formula or mix of functions. Yet we can press enter, and now as you see, there is nothing. So if we select A, it's right. If we select B, it says wrong, or whatever we state in our data worksheet. And if the person didn't even answer, then it's empty. So what we can do is replicate the same thing for the second question, because that's the next step. For the next step, let's add a bit of formatting also for the answer. And what we can do is, again, to go to conditional formatting in the home option and highlight cells rules and take the text that contains. We can click on the arrow and we can say if text contains this, we want to have green. And if the text just moving quickly, I don't know, B, then what we want to have is to have yellow, for instance. And this is how we change the color of this part when answering to the question. And what you can do is replicate exactly the same thing. I would say to go here on conditional formatting, adding new rule, and then only cells that contain, changing cell value to specific text containing. And if the answer is this one, because we already have the function, then to have the feedback is correct, then to, I don't know, have it green or whatever kind of green we want, and click OK. Then add a new conditional formatting and say that if the answer is this one, click on arrows and then change the conditional formatting to yellow, for instance. So I'm not doing it again because it's already done, but this is how you make this kind of formatting, you know, because so far what we did is to have this kind of view. And you can change the color coding, you can choose whatever you want, but this is already made. Now let's move back to the very first 3 rows, because that's the very last part of creating a quiz in Excel. For the answers part, so to recreate this kind of view, what we need to do is first to add a function, and that function would be count A, because what we want to see if here, comma, or here, we have any text at all. We close parentheses, hit enter, and that's it. We can see that now we have only one question answered. If we add the second one, we have here 2. Doesn't matter if the question is answered correctly or incorrectly, only if it's answered. And then for this kind of progress bar, what we can do is to go here on the conditional formatting, new rule, select the very first option, format all cells based on their values. Then we can select a data bar, then leave the solid fill and perhaps choose a green color. And then instead of minimum value automatic, we can put a number, minimum 0. And the maximum, again, we change to number. The maximum, in our case, can be 2. So we hit OK. And as you can see, we already have this one ready to go. And that's the answer part. And now for the score, what we need to do is first of all to get back to our data worksheet, and in the participant answer column, we can put an equal sign and then go to the cell where we have the answer and press enter. And as you can see, it's mirroring the answer B. We can put again an equal sign, then go here and B. And if we change, for instance, we change here to A, it will change into A. So it's instantly mirroring the values that we have, because actually the value of those cells are coming from the original cells. For the score, as we said at the beginning, we want to have a 1 if it's correct and a 0 if it's not correct. So what we will do, we will use the if function and say simply if this one equals this one, then comma 1. If the value is false, then a 0. Close parentheses and hit enter. And we can also drag it for the second one. Now we have AB with AB, which is correct. But if we change it into, let's say, BC, which are not correct, it's going to show 0 for both. So our function is working correctly. Now for the score, so we can type here my score, and then here we want to make the sum of the correct answers questions, and then we can go and so here we put the sum, and then we want to make the sum of scores and close parentheses. As you can see, 0. If we change it to the correct ones, so let's say here A and here B, we have 2. It's working fine. Then for the total number of questions, we can put here an equal sign, a count A again, because we want to count the number of questions, which in our case is 2, close parentheses and hit enter, 2 out of 2. And here what we want to do is, first of all, we want to divide, so equal sign, correct answer divided by total number of questions, enter, just to have the percentage achieved, or the correct answers, the total correct answers in percentages. If it's not showing in percentages, you can go here, click on the percentage, and that's it. Now, what we can do just to prevent any kind of error, we can add before this formula, we can add a function which will be if this one equals to 0, then we want to see a 0%. If it's not equal to 0, then to apply our formula, just to be sure that we don't get any errors of divided by 0. Then for the formatting, it's going to be quite straightforward. We can highlight the cells that are equal to 0 as red and press OK. We don't need because it's already formatted. Then highlight cells that are between 1% and 99%, for instance, to put it yellow and OK. And then for what we have equal to 100, we can put it as green and press OK, and that's it. And here is how we replicate the quiz in Excel without any coding. Now, as we said at the beginning, let's see the 2 surprises that we have for you. The very first surprise is that April is quiz month on Pharmagos, meaning that we have 21 days from the 4th till the 25th of April for 22 quizzes with 22 certificates, absolutely for free. You can see that all those assessments are professional assessments that you can leverage with your friends, with your colleagues, with your family, with whoever you want. There is no limitation, and you can find all of them on pharmagos.com on our blog. So you can recognize on our blog this kind of view where you have Phar Quiz Academy, meaning that there is a quiz, an assessment there. The second surprise is no longer a surprise. We want to thank you for subscribing to our channel. You can use this password, which is quiz24 for April, and go to pharmagos.com/VIP-area, insert the password and get access to free resources created for you. You can also have all the details in the description below. Dear viewer, thanks a lot for watching. Please do comment below about how you feel about having a quiz in Excel. Thanks a lot for watching. See you soon. Bye bye.